Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the Daily Debate. My name is Ahmed Nader, and tonight we're going to focus on the latest escalations in the region, or more specifically the Iranian airstrikes on the American targets in the Gulf. As we did see as well during the day, the visit of the Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi to Moscow and meeting with the Russian President Vladimir Putin, who condemned the American airstrikes on the Iranian facilities for the nuclear facilities in Iran, and more specifically the Fordo nuclear site. And I'm honored to be having with me over the phone on the Daily Debate and Nile TV International to be shedding more light on the latest escalations in the region is Engineer Hassan Shaaban, the political analyst. Engineer Hassan Shaaban, thank you very much for being with us tonight on the Daily Debate and Nile TV International.
Thank you for calling me. Appreciate it.
Anytime. Of course, we did see about an hour ago or 2 hours ago the airstrikes of Iran against the American targets or American facilities or American American facilities in the Gulf, more specifically in Qatar, in Bahrain, in Iraq. How do you see the statement that was sent through these strikes?
I think that was an expected reaction from Iran. Actually, I think the strike to Fordo and Isfahan and Tabriz was really an act of aggression from the U.S. Actually, I think it was irrational, and I think this war might really develop to become a regional war, actually.
Yes.
Indeed, Iran hit American bases, but these bases actually lie in Arab countries, and this actually violates the sovereignty of these countries, actually. I think this act of reaction from Iran, as well as the attack on the nuclear facilities in Iran, will still develop. The snowball is getting bigger every day, and I think we will have a surprise very soon unless the U.S. and Israel realize that
yes,
once you deal with a desperate country, the behavior or the reaction of this country might not be predictable, and it will be chaotic, because I have my own theory, actually, and I think Iran does have a nuclear weapon, actually, but not manufactured in Iran. We have all to remember that the Soviet Union, when it fell, a lot of the equipment and armament from the nuclear arsenal in the Soviet Union disappeared. More than 300 pieces of nuclear devices were disappeared in this era. And everybody was scared that these equipment might fall in the wrong hands or terrorist groups or anything. I think rich countries like Iran and other countries who can afford it bought these weapons, actually, and these weapons very possible could be used. And according to the Israeli and the Hebrew legends and stuff like that, we might see an Armageddon very soon in Israel, and I think the U.S. will be blamed for this. I think the attack on the nuclear facilities triggered what happened today, and I think still we're going to witness the reaction of the U.S. The U.S. will react, because it's a matter of dignity, actually. I think the American people in the U.S. will start to oppose what's happening in the Middle East, and the reaction will be very negative on the popularity of President Donald Trump, because the U.S. is being dragged. Israel is dragging the U.S. to this crazy war, and I think we might see a very tragic end to this war.
And you mentioned the importance of the statements that were given or were released by the U.S. officials a couple of days ago against retaliation, a warning against retaliation by the Iranian authorities and the Iranian armed forces following the attacks, the United States attacks against the Iranian facilities in Tehran, on the nuclear facilities more specifically. How would you see this cycle of retaliation, as you mentioned, involving Israel, Iran, the United States? Do you think it will be involving even more countries in the near future? How it will end? Will it ever end?
Well, I think we will see an escalation in the coming few days, actually, unless a mediator gets involved, actually, between the U.S. and Iran, an acceptable mediator, actually, unless this mediator have the power to convince the Iranians to stop and hold the reaction of the U.S. Army in the area. I mean, the bases are going is alerted, actually. All the American bases, U.S. bases, are on alert right now. The red light is on, and they're considering themselves under attack. And I think somebody should try to get involved as soon as possible to, just put and, try to seize the fire, a ceasefire as soon as possible. I don't know if our country, Egypt, is geared to play this role. The Iranian delegation that was here a few weeks ago, this means that we're in good terms with Iran, and there is a decent relationship between us and Iran. We might be able to play this role because the consequences are fatal. I think if Iran will feel that they are alone in this battle with a huge army like the U.S. I think they will be desperate, and yes, they might have to use a solution to put an end to this war. But the solution will be very tragic, and we might see a lot of bloodshed in Israel itself.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of possible mediation efforts by Egypt more specifically, because we have seen over the past couple of days contacts by His Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi with the Iranian President, for example, the Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian, and the following day another phone call with President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi with the Sultan of Oman, Haytham bin Tariq. How do you see those mediation efforts that took place over the past couple of days, and what can Egypt do for the near future, for the upcoming week, to be specific, in terms of de-escalation of the situation in the region?
I think Egypt could play a role if it was acceptable to the Iranians and to the Americans and to Israel, because we have a treaty with Israel. We have a treaty, and we respected our treaty, the peace treaty with Israel. And the U.S. was our ally for a long time since we signed this agreement. I think we enjoy the respect and believe in our behavior with the Iranians, authority. I think we could play this role, yes, along with the Omani government, with the Sultan over there. Oman is a very wise country, and they're very close to Iran, and they share a lot of common interests, like Hormuz and all this. We could play this role if we coordinate with Oman, this could work out.
Engineer Hassan Shaaban, for the past, I think, week, we have seen the US President Donald Trump saying that he will be taking at least a couple of weeks thinking about being involved in the Iranian-Israeli war. But following those statements, a couple of days later, we did see the American strikes against the Iranian facilities, or the nuclear facilities, in specific against the Fordo nuclear site, to be even more specific. On the other hand, within the United States, the Democrats themselves, do you think they will be protesting against the involvement of the United States in this war, in those retaliatory strikes against Iran, being involved in the cycle of retaliation between Iran, Israel, and now the United States as well?
I think there is a lot of opposition, you know, in the U.S. against the policy that President Donald Trump is following in regard to this issue.
Yes.
Also, we have to consider the attitude, the business attitude that President Trump is following in dealing with the Middle East.
Yes.
President Donald Trump follows a policy that does not have or yield an economical benefit is a wrong policy. I think sometimes you're going to have to put aside your benefit from policy. You're going to have settle for peace. The U.S. have the responsibility, worldwide responsibility. Today, the U.S. is playing the role of the world leader or the free world leader. And I don't think they should actually exceed this role. I think enough is enough. I think the support of the U.S. to Israel, should stop at this stage, actually. I think all the taxpayers in the U.S. are complaining. I don't understand why President Trump puts a big program to squeeze the cost of running the government in different departments.
Yes.
And suddenly he comes up with this huge budget to bomb and get involved in this war that could have been avoided, actually, with a lot of effort from the international community. I think Russia is also geared to play a role in this issue. President Putin being very close to President Donald Trump, he could play a role in this issue. The situation is very hairy, and I think we will see a lot of escalation in the coming few days. Hopefully, nobody will push the red button, because I'm almost convinced that somebody does have an atomic tactical bomb, probably, and it could be used in a desperate situation. We're very scared of doing this, but especially nobody actually came back and assured us that there is no radioactive leakage in the Fordo and the Asfahan and Tabriz. I mean, all of this is just general talk. This is press.
Yes.
But do we have really a radioactive leakage in these areas or not yet? You don't really know
official
yet.
Statements, yes.
And once Iran will discover that there is a leakage in this area that threats the lives of people in Iran,
yes,
Iran will completely go berserk, and we will see a very severe reaction from Iran.
Yes, Engineer Hassan Shaaban, the political and the economic expert, thank you very much for being with us tonight on the Daily Debate over the phone. And we will be heading to the first report of the daily debate for tonight, focusing on the talks that took place between the Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi in Moscow with the Vladimir Putin, the Russian president in Moscow. We'll be having more details in the upcoming reports, so stay tuned.
Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi arrived in Moscow on Monday to hold critical talks with President Vladimir Putin just 48 hours after a major U.S. strikes on Iran's key nuclear facilities. Israel launched strikes on Iran's military and nuclear program earlier this month, and Tehran has responded with its own salvos of rockets and drones. Scores of civilians have been killed in both countries since the air war began. While Russia has condemned the Israeli and U.S. strikes, it has not offered military assistance to Tehran, and it has downplayed its commitments under a strategic partnership agreement signed with Iran earlier this year. Araghchi said, in this new dangerous situation, our consultations with Russia can certainly be of great importance. Araghchi would meet with Putin and other senior Russian officials to discuss regional and international developments following the military aggression by the United States and Israel. Putin had initially floated the idea of mediating between Iran and Israel on Friday. However, he said he was merely suggesting ideas after U.S. President Donald Trump dismissed a Kremlin role in resolving the crisis. Putin said during the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum that they are no means seeking to act as a mediator, they are simply suggesting ideas. Putin added that hundreds of his country's nuclear experts will continue to work at a power plant in Iran after Israel agreed to guarantee their safety. Over 200 Russian experts are currently working at the Bushehr nuclear power plant, and Putin said this total number may reach 600 people. On Saturday, Russia's foreign ministry condemned the U.S. strikes as irresponsible after earlier warning Washington against any military intervention.